Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host for the podcast, Tyler Schatz, the man who is dead but may never die. Joining me this evening here are fine folks. We'll start off with the introduction of Mr. Gary Delaney back from his assignment of slaying dragons.
Gary, the mountain that rides.
Gary, the mountain that rides.
Your mom.
Amanda Howard.
Hello. I need to create a nickname.
We'll have to workshop a nickname throughout the podcast here for you.
They change.
Stephen Howard.
I'm blanking. Oh God, I had an idea. It's gone. I'm sorry, I missed it. It's gone.
And then joining us again, Mr. Nick Castillo.
Always pay the iron price.
Always. Not the gold price.
Nope.
Alright, so here we are. We have watched Season 2, Episode 3, What is Dead May Never Die, and Episode 4, Garden of Bones. So we're here to start talking about Episode 3, What is Dead May Never Die, and the synopsis, according to IMDb, states this episode is: Tyrion tries to see who he can trust in the small council. Catelyn visits Renly to try and persuade him to join Robb in the war. And Theon must decide if his loyalties lie with his own family or with Robb. Bum, bum, bum. I believe, too, what is dead may never die. Is that the Ironborn? No, theirs is we do not sow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is, but it's like the religion.
That's
Yep.
what it is. It's the religious tone to it. Couple of things to note here before I kind of just throw out my first question for the evening here. We're introduced to Marjorie Tyrell and Brienne of Tarth in this episode. And I think that's what I have here for episode introductions here, unless I missed some. But I'll throw out here my first question here. So this episode is, as it kind of talks about, is Theon is there at the Iron Islands talking to his family, trying to persuade them to join Robb. But in the end here, Balon Greyjoy is actually deciding, no, now is the perfect time for the Ironborn to rise up again and start doing what they do of pillaging, reaving the coastal lands here. So Balon has decided that now they are going to attack the north because it is technically empty, with Robb and his men off in the southern parts of the Westeros fighting their battles there. What do we kind of think of Balon's decision here to basically not help Robb Stark and kind of go do his own thing, proclaiming himself his own king? Gary, I'll throw it right over to you to start off with.
Oh, heaven help us.
Well, I was listening. What was the question? So, and I was like trying to collaborate my notes, and then I just got distracted for a second. I didn't hear Tyler's question.
So Balon has made the decision to attack the north.
Yes.
We think this is a good idea.
In his mind, it is, because this is the first introduction we've had to him. So, and then when you sort of learn about his religion, I don't know how, it didn't go very deep into the religion. It was like, but the family words is supposed to be like the flag of like, we do not sow. We don't trade. We don't like do any commerce. We just straight up steal shit. Like, so for him, it's just like somebody left the bank unsupervised for a day. Like, let's go steal some shit and come back. And by the time they come back, half of them are going to be fucking dead. So, and in the War of the Seven Kingdoms, like, Robb really can't do much to send people back up north because he has to, he has more important shit going on. It's still sad, but...
And I think, for myself, I have two opinions of this. One, I don't know if it entirely makes sense what he's doing in terms of you're taking 30 longboats and you're going to raid the northern coasts. Number one, we're talking about a feudal military society where each of those each of those little towns, they wouldn't have sent every single soldier off to fight. You send a certain percentage of your soldiers off to fight, so they technically still would have encountered resistance. But then also, I mean, they've got to understand that there's a systemic difference here. That the Iron Islands aren't big, and someone's going to want revenge at some point.
Absolutely.
I'd say, like, from his point of view and what his area is about, it makes an immediate sense of a strategic thing. Like, yeah, they pillage, they plunder, the North is empty, go for it. But I don't understand his long-term goals, because he says Winterfell may hold out for a year. And I'm like, but do you have the people? Do you know how far away that is? Like, we've looked at the map. Do you know how long it takes to get there to set a siege? You have boats. And granted, they have more than 30 because the Yara was sent off with 30, but they had hundreds more or whatever. But Winterfell is not on the sea. It was strategically put in the middle for a very good reason. What are you going to do when Robb Stark brings his army back up?
Winterfell is also designed as this massive, massive fortress. You know, it's like, and again, you know, a siege is designed to kind of stall them out. But what do you think they're doing in there for a year? Right? They're not just sitting there biding their time, you know, making reinforcements, calling more people from all over the north, which is the largest landmass in the Seven Kingdoms. You know, they're going to get destroyed. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with all those comments. It's strategic that it fits with who his personality is introduced to be. But yeah, I mean, he lost his first two sons, and his only heir was stolen as a way of saying, don't do this again. And so the first opportunity that comes up, he does it again. My mind went right to the contemporary in politics, and in my mind, it's totally Putin. You know, it's like I'm going to go take this because I have this grand view that this is mine. It's my destiny to steal, rape, and pillage, and I'm going to pay the iron price and go take what I can because by right, it's mine. And yeah, short term, I get why he's probably doing it in his mind, but long term, no, terrible decision.
I feel like there's a certain level of instability in the Seven Kingdoms because they lost their king. There's questions on the line of succession. There's at this point, we've got to assume have we been introduced to Renly at this point?
Yes.
We know Renly is fighting for the crown. And then we've been introduced to Stannis. Stannis has a claim to the crown. We know Robb. So they already know that there's 3 different armies that are going to attack King's Landing. And however that shakes out, when that's done 5 years down the road, people are like, oh yeah, he raped and he pillaged. Like, but honestly, he's not really the top tier bad guy. He's just kind of a prick. Like, in 5 years, like, he's not going to be a war criminal. He's just going to be a guy who shit in your bed while you were away.
So I guess my counterpoint to that would be, and it's a good point. Don't get me wrong. That's a very good point. But I don't think that he ever makes his, who's Theon's dad's name? I can't remember. Balon never makes his strategic goals clear as to what exactly he's trying to accomplish by raiding. The Vikings, when they raided, they took settlements. When all these other people across the history of the world, once they started raiding, it was to take settlements, to take land. And if you are right in that he is counting on him just being a war criminal at the end and no one caring about it, that means that he's not going to be taking land. Because if he takes any land, that's going to be basically the English taking Calais. The French are going to fight, and they're going to fight for it back. And they're eventually going to take it because you don't have the manpower to hold it. It's impossible for a island nation to hold on to a little inlet on a continental possession.
I think, though, he wanted to take some land, though, because they not only take Winterfell, they also take Moat Cailin for some reason. And I can't remember the strategic reason why it was Moat Cailin was chosen. That's where Yara ends up taking the majority of the forces, and Theon makes the decision with his crew that, like, oh, Winterfell's empty, we're going to go take Winterfell. He convinces his crew. Otherwise, they were just going to be pillaging and raiding the fishing shores there, basically. But then too, yeah, like this also kind of kicks off what is referred to in the books as the War of the Five Kings, because now we have 5 different people who have proclaimed themselves as kings. We have Stannis Baratheon seeking his claim, pressing his claim. Renly believes that he can press his claim because nobody likes Stannis. Then Robb Stark has now been declared king of the North. We still have Joffrey Baratheon as king of technically the 7 kingdoms for now, on the Iron Throne in Westeros, and now Balon Greyjoy has declared himself king on the Salt Throne of the Iron Islands there. Which then, as kind of, I think, I apologize, I forgot who made the point there, but this does kind of kick off more of the instability within the 7 kingdoms there, because now everything but Dorne basically is now engulfed in this war here for control, or kind of trying to gain their own piece of the pie there, because again, the stability of the Targaryen dynasty that held the kind of realm together for so long is gone because Robert dethroned them, and now Robert is gone himself too, which again has thrown everything else into chaos there.
I guess
FYI,
Oh, sorry. No, go. Sorry.
I was going to say, FYI, I just pulled up the map here in the book that I'm always referencing, The World of Ice and Fire, and Moat Cailin is actually closer to the east side of Westeros in the north than it is on the west
side.
Yeah, it's down the Fever River, according to this map, through the Salt Spear Inlet. So it's a good position to take because you're just north of the neck and you can cut off everyone else. But crap, that's a ways in by boat.
Isn't there like sorry, Stephen? Isn't there like I want to say a river or something like that that connects the western side of the Westeros to Moat Cailin though? Because if I remember in the books, I think they sail up the river to a point and then take over the moat.
Yeah, you come in on Salt Spear. It's an inlet just above Flint's Fingers. There's a small little watch. And then you go down the Fever River. And then it's closer to the eastern side, near the Bight, just above the Aaron's, the Vale, is the Bight, where the 3 sisters are located. And Moat Cailin is just a little bit inlet from there on the east side of the map. So it's a jump, is what I was trying to get at.
I guess that I just wanted to say we are acting like each of these actors, although, and when I say actors, I don't mean like literally actors in a movie, but actors in terms of different people in the fighting in this war. We're acting like they're all supposed to be rational actors. True. And that they all have these very well-defined, well-thought-out motives. And I'm wondering if we are attributing a little bit too much to Balon Greyjoy here. Is he a rational actor? Is he? Because I go back to, I don't see the Iron Islands being able to hold this at any point. Mm-hmm. It's for glory. It's for his pride. And those aren't rational motives. They're understandable, but they're not rational. They're not going to help a kingdom thrive or even exist. So is Balon Greyjoy an irrational actor?
I'll give you one step further. I would even say, is he knowledgeable? Like, I mean, if you think general geography, it's like, okay, let's go take over Slovakia. I roughly know where that is. If you have a map in front of me, I can find out where that is. So perhaps Balon Greyjoy knows the Westerlands. You know, they're right off the coast. He knows where the north is. But if I hear that Robb Stark's taking his army down south, maybe he roughly has an idea where that is. You know, we say all the time that the Iron Islands, Balon Greyjoy has been there most of his life, unless he's raiding or pillaging on the sea. He's not on the land. You know, we don't sow, as we talked about. So it's kind of vague, maybe even to him. So is it rational? Is he knowledgeable? I don't even know if he may be aware of how far south or how little distance he's actually gone. Maybe Robb is closer than he's giving him credit for. So, again, just to reiterate, it's kind of like if Cuba said they were going to go after Arizona.
Yeah.
It's like, it's close, but you got to cross a couple land masses to get there.
I think that's a great point. And yeah, no, that's a great point.
Well, and I suppose it's been a while for him too. I mean, presumably he was great at pillaging and reaving, but like the last great battle that we know of would have been when he rebelled, which is Theon
How
was
did that
was a
win for him?
child.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They said
and he
9 years
lost.
he's been gone.
So it's been at least 9 years since he's even planned a thing, and it shows.
True. He looked a little weathered, and not just like from life on the sea.
So,
And I think, sorry.
I was gonna say I had a different adjacent topic about Theon Greyjoy, so I didn't know. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, no, go
You can
for it.
transition.
So my adjacent topic on Theon Greyjoy is: do you think his father's disappointment hurts? Because I made a note of that as like because Theon his entire life has struggled with identity. He thinks of himself as a lord the entire time he's in Winterfell, even though he's a prisoner. He still thinks of himself a lord. Like he, in the early seasons, he talks about, oh, the men of the Iron Islands are known for their archery and their banging women, and so like he thinks himself a lord. And then the third point I have is he realizes that none of the skills that he gained in Winterfell are things that his father values. Like, he dresses nicely, he's well-mannered, he's polite, he understands how the Seven Kingdoms work, sort of like how the Maester is teaching Bran all, the map of the Seven Kingdoms, all the houses, and what their words are, and who their lords are. Balon doesn't give a shit about who the Lord is there. He just is trying to find the sheep that he can pillage and move on. Like, so all these things that Theon gained is just fucking worthless.
I think that's a good point. And I think that it's almost kind of like what the Confederate boys in the United States who grow up in the North and think that they, for some reason, have this great history behind them, like what Theon thinks with the Iron Islands. And just to get back and to realize it's all made up. It's not made up, but he doesn't fit in it. He's put himself in it psychologically, but he doesn't fit in that culture.
Right.
Yeah.
Theon. What's your next question, Tyler?
I was going to throw this over to Nick there for his question here. We'll kind of just keep going round and round with some of our questions here.
I thought along the lines of what Gary was saying, when you think about Theon's return, it seems so disjointed to what he thought it was, because he kind of felt like, even him, like you were just saying, Gary, in his description, they're rough and they're ragged and they're tough warriors. And then, as his dad very astutely points out, he walks in with this big bauble on his neck and he looks all fancy and he thinks he should get a hero's welcome when he steps off the boat. And yeah, even with his own description, why would they care when he comes back? It's like they would be out ravaging and pillaging still, rocking and rolling, even when he's gone, because that's just who they are. And then he comes back and he has this really great line at the end of that interaction with his dad where he's like, "You gave me away. Why are you berating me for returning after 9 years when you're the one who gave me away? Like you didn't even care." Something like, a dog you didn't want or something like that. And it's this whole thought of, yeah, it would be disappointing for him. My thought would be, is there something he could have done, knowing what we know at this point in the story, in the way he returned? We've kind of seen him always be like, I'm in the room, or I'm standing, like we were just saying, along shoulder to shoulder with the Starks. I'm a lord in my own eyes. I'm idolized myself. Is there something he could have done, shy of maybe him humbling himself? Because I don't think that would be in character for him when he showed up with his father. That would have maybe made him seem more ironborn in his father's eyes. Or was he doomed from the start?
I think he was doomed from the start. I think, yeah, he showed up and they already had, they were well underway with plans to already invade the North.
Exactly.
There's nothing he could have done.
Like,
exactly.
I wonder what it would have been like if he showed up instead of like proud of himself, but like bitter towards them for giving him up or something. Like, with his attitude, I didn't like him either.
Mm-hmm.
Healing up
So
your sister tends to do that. That's not a cool
Yeah.
thing.
but if he had come in with any kind of other attitude, like, would it have been different? I don't think it would have been a different result. Would they have treated him differently? Maybe. Doubt it. There's a chance.
Circling back to a question I had earlier, but is someone who read the books, how is there more in-depth coverage of the Iron Islands in the books? And you guys were talking about how like he seemed like he was stupid or ill. He wasn't knowledgeable in inland warfare. But I was just asking the question: is that something that was just not well covered in the books, or as becomes kind of a theme at some point in the show, like they just gloss over it because they got other shit to want to spend time on, that they just didn't really spend the time trying to flesh out Balon. They just were like, we need to get him from introduced to like they're pillaging the North in 20 minutes or less of screen time.
Sure, but I mean, he's willing to write so long in those books about a whole bunch of other things. And both Tyler and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, because I read this a long time ago and I'm not sure I remember it fully. But I'm pretty sure that it just goes over the attack plans and the relations, interfamily relations, and some of the religion when they get to the Iron Islands. I don't think it goes over any real knowledge of the
Goes
situation.
more later on, not now. Like in later books, I think. But at this point, I think I kind of liked it showing us Theon's point of view, though, because like you felt the shock that he did, because he's going there so confident that he is just going to come home a hero, and so the reader is too. Maybe annoyed at him, but they're pretty sure it's going to be fine. And then his shock when his father asked him, "Did you pay the iron price of the gold for that trinket?" He's just like, when he realizes that he had forgotten, like that hit me too.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of liked seeing it from Theon's point of view, but yeah, it doesn't really spend a lot of time on it, I feel like.
Well, also, I think it's more his mission when he went to the Iron Islands was to, like, much like the Westerosi way, was like to call in your favors and to call in your banners.
Yeah.
But his dad and sister don't work on that system, so when he got there, he had to realize he could either leave and go back to Robb empty-handed, and with the realization that he's a failure in the eyes of his father, or he could just stay and try to win his father's admiration.
Yeah, and that must be a pretty heady thing, honestly, realizing even if so far
Right.
you're not happy with your father, but to realize that he thinks you're an utter disappointment when you haven't seen him since a child, like how can you not crave that approval?
Absolutely. I think that there's a lot there too. This show, which obviously is sourced from the book, the story does such a good job of making people feel for these characters. Since we're
Yeah.
harping on Theon, like he's seriously a character that so many people hate early on. It's just like his terrible life choices. He's done this to himself. And then we see as the story progresses, that might not be the case in later seasons. And so when you see, yeah, absolutely, the craving of, I want to do the right thing in the eyes of who I'm idolizing today, right? I want to do right by Robb Stark and the Starks because I'm, a Westerosi lord as well. Oh crap! Well, no, I'm an Ironborn. I want to do well in the eyes of my father. What would his story have looked like? Yeah, if he had just turned back to Robb and realized, hey, it's not good. By the way, they're coming for us. I think that really this flip flop in loyalty to us and our culture seems very backhanded. But yeah, absolutely, I think family, blood is thicker than water in that sense.
I agree completely. I think that he's a tragic character. He's an absolutely tragic character.
Right.
And I think that one of the I don't know if you want to call it a disservice, but he was raised by the Western lords, by Robb Stark, he was a brother of Robb. He was the son basically of Eddard Stark. I mean, not in blood, but in mannerisms and how he learned. And he learned that family is everything. And then when he comes back, he's thrust into family is everything, but your family hates you. So
that's really interesting point. We don't have to get into it. Just the thought that, yeah, I hadn't thought of that before. He's raised by the Starks, right? What had happened if, instead of Eddard Stark, Ned, had taken him in? What if Jon Arryn had taken him, and
Yeah.
Theon was raised by Lysa Arryn, and Jon Arryn? Or was when he became Hand of the King, Jon Arryn brought him down, and Theon was raised in King's Landing, right? If you go back to Robert's Rebellion, there's all these little nuances about, maybe he was raised up to think family is everything. I want to do what's right in the eyes of my family, my kin, when he goes back to the Ironborn, because he saw how Eddard was revered by his sons, Robb, Bran, Jon, essentially. And so, very interesting point there. Yeah, the family that raised him set a lot of those ideas in his head, too. Good thought.
I guess, too, even talking about that kind of ties into, to branch out a little bit into more pop culture, like the Superman character in comic books there. Superman was raised by a Midwestern family here in Smallville, Kansas there, so he was instilled the ideas, work hard, treat others with respect and everything like that. But then you read some of the other stories that are in the DC universe of like, well, what happens if Superman's rocket landed over in Soviet Russia? Like, I think it's the Red Sun comic book line there. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
it's all
point.
kind of just about how your upbringing, like even the slightest change to your upbringing could change your character. I mean, your character maybe not change, because I think in the comics they still write Superman as basically this guy who's out to do good in the world here, essentially. But even just like the upbringing of the character kind of just changes the character somewhat, to the point of there's still kind of that deep down inside that character, but like everything around that is just different.
I think that's nature and nurture.
Yeah, and I mean, even siblings in the same family, because their different experiences in that same family turn out wildly different. So, yeah, I think that would make a big difference. Interesting to think about. I love that.
Anything
Tragic.
else on the Greyjoys, or we're going to move on to another topic?
Well, since Gary's going
great.
to speak up there, unless Nick, if you had anything else, we'll go to
I
Gary's
was just going to say, they're a great family. I wish them all the best. Greyjoys forever.
They'll end well for them.
Yes.
The first time, similar to like a conversation where one person was kind of sideswiped by the other. The tag on the end of the last episode, the first thing in this episode, is Jon getting caught by Craster and having to have to apologize, and then the realization that the Lord Commander knew that like Craster was murdering his sons, but the Lord Commander, just the world that they live in, he just has to accept it. Like, and there was a different point in the episode, I wish I would have written it down, about characters sort of like having an upbringing like we talked about earlier, and then just being like rocked by the sense that like not everyone has the same core values as the Starks. Who grew up like,
yeah,
Craster is the great, not Craster. Lord Marmont is the great bear, and just like really honorable guy that Jon thinks the most of, like, and he knows he's a great leader. But just this realization that like everything that he sort of assumed, that like that realizing the Lord Commander has to make some sacrifices to his morality to do what's best in the grand scheme. And so that was my bonus question.
Yeah, I would say this kind of goes back to the slower breakdown of Jon's kind of realization that the Night's Watch is really not this grand brotherhood of men kind of doing what's best for the realm. They're a lot of undesirable people now basically at the wall kind of doing their defending. And I guess too, he's also probably learning that it's probably kind of like hard for him being raised by Ned Stark, who was always proclaimed as being, other than the one slip up he had when he went to war with Robert in Robert's Rebellion there. He was always proclaimed as being this righteous person, this do-gooder and everything like that. And then he's kind of slowly coming to realize that like it doesn't always work that way in real life anymore. And especially not when you're like removed from being a lord's, from being a high lord, that you kind of can do what you want there. I'm not saying that Ned always did what he wanted, but kind of being removed from that that way of life. They're into kind of the more nitty gritty of the Night's Watch. Basically, one slip up can mean death of you or 100 other people in your group there. So he's realizing that there are some necessary evils that you have to kind of accept in life of being part of the Night's Watch.
Morality is black and white, but the world is messy.
Yeah, very true. I agree that there were a couple instances where people are kind of still finding things out, and we are in the audience for sure because we're new to this, but people are still kind of learning who people are too. I think Tyrion in King's Landing has one of those moments, Gary, where he's talking with his sister about who gave the order to go after, have the gold cloaks go after the children that were fathered, and he realizes, you can't give that order, and then he has that shocked puppy look of, you didn't give the order, and he realizes she didn't even know that was going to transpire. And it's this, people are realizing not only the depths that some people will sink to, but they realize the implications for it as well. I don't want to jump ahead and switch topics, but yeah, Tyrion has that line where he's like, did he tell you he was going to give that order? And then Cersei's quiet, and he kind of looks at her, and he's like, no, I think that would have been worse to know that someone close to you is that depraved or that willing to hold on to power, that they're willing to butcher other people, innocents, literally babes. And so, yeah, and Tyrion has that interaction with Bronn about, would you do it if I had asked you to do it? So there's this level of, how poor is Balon going to treat Theon? How poorly is Cersei willing to sacrifice the world to keep her offspring content? And how much is I just spaced his name, the current king, idiot boy. Joffrey. How much is Joffrey willing to let the world burn to satiate his hunger?
Yeah. The other sort of short question I had early part of the episode is as you get reintroduced to Renly as King Renly, like sort of noticing there's a little bit of a change in his mannerisms, the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, because he went from, in season 1, being the baby brother of like Robert Baratheon to now like trying to puff up his chest and be like, be a king, be kingly. And anyway, that was my item I noted.
I could weigh into that just a tiny little bit. I think it's interesting too. I think Renly is playing in his mind who he thinks a king is. I don't think he has the slightest idea.
That's
really.
So
yeah.
You think
no. He's pretending to be who his brother was. When Robert steps off his stag in Winterfell, and the first time we're introduced to him and his entourage, he strides across the open ground and walks right up to Ned and just says something cocky like, you've gotten fat. But like, he walks with a confidence and a swagger that Renly would never have. And if you watch some of those early episodes, you talk about the way he's postulating, the way he stands, and like, even when he's sitting next to Marjorie, I think Marjorie's like clapping and cheering on Brienne, and she's involved in the show. And Renly's like trying to sit there. He looks awkward because his chest is kind of puffed out. Maybe it's his armor, but he's just like, he's sitting trying to look tall, trying to look like he's strong. But he doesn't. It comes off as bravado. And I think, like, as everybody talks about, Stannis is tested. Renly's never set foot on a battlefield. And being a king is not just looking like one or acting like one. It's a lot like Tyrion said, or Cersei kind of understands that it's doing the dirty work and knowing how to play the game. I think Tyrion has that line when he's talking with Varys. It's like, I know how to play this game. I don't think Renly does.
I agree for the most part, although I will give Renly credit in that out of all the other kings who just say what's off the top of their head and can't get any of that, he does actually have that kingly ability of the diplomacy and not saying everything that he's thinking right then, keeping his counsel. Right. I was thinking that when we were watching the episode today, because I was like, every time Stannis opens his mouth, I was like, that's not the point. And at least Renly, like, I wasn't sure what his plan was, which might mean there is no plan, but he would attempt to, like, listen to the envoys and, like, all that. I was like, so, I mean, I'll give him his due there.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
Catelyn shows up, there's a verbal back and forth about who they declare as a lord and who they declare as a king. So Catelyn at no point gives Renly the title of king. He said Lord Renly, but in the inverse, like Renly at no point acknowledges that Robb is a king. Like they give themselves the pleasantries of lords, but they never give each other the pleasantries of royalty.
Which makes sense diplomatically. It's just like you would never, I always bring it to modern examples or world examples. I apologize about that. It'd be like saying that Putin is president of Russia because he wants to take over Russia. Giving him that title is in itself its own power. And so giving someone the power that that someone is the president, even though they didn't win the election, and saying, well, Mr. President, they're not the president. They didn't win the election. Ergo, they shouldn't have that title. And I think that's a very strong piece of diplomatic power that everyone has to communicate. You communicate what their title is in your, I guess, stance. You don't acknowledge what they believe that they have that you don't, because then they will take it as a priority in the next negotiation.
That's the fourth dimensional chess we were talking about.
Anyway, that's all I had on Renly. Steven, do you have a fun topic?
I wanted to bring up the fun little thing with Tyrion and the little. That's a big thing of juice. Anyway, sorry. I wanted to bring up the thing with Tyrion at the beginning of the episode, how he finds Grandmaster Pycelle.
That was going to be mine.
Take that. I think it's a clever little thing. It's something that you hear in a lot of spy novels and whatnot, giving everyone a similar story with one piece of information missing or different so that you know who's the one leaking the information. And I think it works very well. I think it puts everyone on notice. Hey, you better watch what you're saying. I think it was a very, very well done situation, personally. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if anyone else had different thoughts.
I mean, I thought it was okay, I guess, but I actually really enjoyed watching that part. No, I was thinking the same thing, because it was just so enjoyable to watch, because he did it so well and it was so funny. For us, at least. I'm sure it wasn't as amusing for Pycelle, which it's really kind of hard to feel bad for him. Yeah, poor guy.
I noted who he communicated each suitor to. Littlefinger was an easy one. Littlefinger, he said Robb and Aaron of the Vale. And Littlefinger is actually from the Riverlands. No, it's from the Riverlands or the Vale? Shit.
He's from the Fingers, but he has got connections with Lysa Arryn, so.
Yes, that was what I was going to say. He has a previous relationship with Lysa Arryn, so that's who you'd send for that diplomacy. And for Theon Greyjoy, he sends to Varys, the Spider, because of the three suitors, Theon Greyjoy is probably the furthest from the crown at this point in the story. A little more of a get, as they say. And then the Grand Maester is Dorne, which there's been very, very little introduction of Dorne or Dornish characters at this point.
I don't think there's been any yet.
Yeah.
This is like the first mention of it.
So anyway, I just found that interesting that he gave them all a different story, but maybe he gave them all a different story specific to their strengths.
I think that's a good point. That's a very good point.
Plausible. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all. Masterful move. Tyrion does know how to play this game, and you almost, as he's telling the story, and I think the camera cuts away in his sentence, and when it pans back, it's someone else. So you can just see he's setting it up. You almost
Yep.
know that someone's gonna falter here and talk behind his back. And yeah, it's artful.
I think it starts with Varys, and then it
No, I think it starts with Pycelle.
starts with Pycelle.
I
Yeah,
think
because
so.
he's getting like diarrhea medicine.
Oh, way too much exposition.
You of all people, Gary, would appreciate a good diarrhea inference.
Gotta keep regular. Anyway.
Yeah, I was going to mention here too. That was definitely one of the parts that I had written down about this little episode here too. And it goes back to our discussion. I forget which episode. I think it was maybe the last episode of Tyrion basically being the new player to the Game of Thrones in King's Landing specifically now here of trying to establish himself as a true player in the game.
I agree. Yeah, and he does. I mean, he really does. This is a masterful move that everyone will hear about and that everyone will start to fear about. He's moving up in those ranks of power, and it's oh god, who is it that says that power is perceived?
That's a conversation with Varys, but it might not be till the next episode.
All right, you're right. But I maybe getting a little close to the next episode. That is a very bodes real well for Tyrion here because power isn't being perceived, and right now he is perceived as the power in the Red Keep.
Right. He's able to dismiss Janis Slint
Mm-hmm.
and sends him to the wall. Replaces him with people close to him, Bronn. Yeah.
Do you have
I think
anything else
that-
for us, Stephen? Oh, sorry, Nick. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to tag on really quick. I think Tyrion also has that interaction. I think I'm backtracking a little bit, but when he first finds Varys with Shay in his room, he says, "I don't like threats," and he says something about, "I know how this game is played." And Varys replies back, "It's like I'm not Ned Stark," and replies, "Ned Stark was an honest man." He goes, "I'm not an honest man." We give a lot of crap to politics for being deceitful or lying. But that's kind of the culture that this type of thing lends itself to. If you're Ned Stark and you say, "I found a fault," everyone, this is at fault. You got your head lopped off. Whereas this game is played, you don't show your hand until the time is opportune. Not because it's like you said, Stephen. Morality, black and white. And so, yeah, if Tyrion was to come into the small council and say, "I trust Janis Slant. He's probably learned his lesson. And, I can trust Littlefinger and Master Pycelle," it would be poor. So the way he tries to, he's not trying to get them in trouble. He's seeing who he can trust with a secret. And it's a very simple secret, but it's knowing your resources. So he knows his sister's going to fly off the handle. And if she hears something, it will get back to him quickly. If his sister doesn't say anything, then he's just speaking to the three of them, and there's nothing going to come of it. So it was very well played, and knowing your audience, as it were, of if I do this domino will surely fall into this one.
And I agree with you that it's idea of we like to disdain politics, but court politics is no joke. You're going to end up with literally a spear in your back, or literally with your head chopped off if you don't play it well. So
Right.
I think he is playing court politics very, very well.
Right.
All right. Do you have anything else, Stephen, that we wanted to discuss on?
No,
All right.
I'm good.
Amanda.
Well, Stephen took mine, but I did have another one, just a little small scene when it showed the Queen and Tommen and Myrcella and Sansa having like dinner
Ooh.
together.
Good one.
Sansa by this time just seems like she's determined the best path to survive is just to completely stick to her, as if she's stupid, just saying, "I love Joffrey, he's my everything, I am 100% loyal to him." But I also thought it was interesting that one point when Tommen asks, "Is Joffrey going to kill him? Going to kill Sansa's brother?" And Cersei said, "He might. Would you like that?" And Tommen said, "No," which I thought was really nice. A really interesting
Right.
little thing.
It is.
Right.
Yeah. Shows he's not psychopathic like his
Yeah.
brother.
Very
Who
true.
knew that a brother of that little monster could
Oh.
still be like a decent human being?
I don't even know who would like that sort of monster. I mean, whose favorite character would be that type of monster? It's that person in themselves would have to be a monster, Gary.
Oh my goodness.
I feel like Cersei's trying to get a moral compass on the rest of her children because she needs to make sure that Joffrey doesn't completely spoil and ruin and darken the rest of her children. Because the way he's playing, he's gonna make enemies and it's not gonna be good. So, but she still has hope in the rest of her children, and they tried. They said, "Oh well, we don't really want people to die, but."
Ooh. Interesting. I'm intrigued on that note, Gary. You struck a nerve. Do we think Cersei asked her? Do we think Cersei asked her children that because she wanted Tommen to say yes, or because she was to toy with Sansa, or was she surprised that he said no? Or do you think
I think she was
she asked?
surprised.
I think she's surprised, knowing the number of times Cersei's threatened to burn all her enemies to the ground. On the other hand,
Yeah.
it is a nice thought. It'd be nice to think that she would do any kind of discipline or actually like moral raising of her children.
Yeah, Gary, you made the comment
Sorry,
about
Gary.
she's trying to find a moral compass for her kids. I don't think she was. I think she's because she kind of sneered at it. Would you like that if your brother killed her brother? Yeah, and she kind of was. I think she was kind of hoping that Tommen would say yes and smile at Sansa just to destroy her even more.
Yep.
It's like a control thing over Sansa.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, Gary. I know it's against your favorite character, but
he's evil, Gary.
Feels like she's lost control of the wheel. Like she used to have Robert Baratheon, who didn't give a shit about court politics, and so that's what she clung to. And then she's got Joffrey, who doesn't give a shit about court politics, but it's because he's a fucking madman. So she just wants to keep one hand on the wheel, and so she's just trying to grasp at any sort of sign that she's still sane and that she's not the crazy person, and somehow Joffrey's the sane one of the family.
and why does she have to worry about that with Joffrey now? Why is Robert gone?
I wouldn't say she's been clinging to Robert ever. I would say that Robert was idealized. She's always clung to Jaime.
This is true. I agree.
In the monarchy, she knew her place in the monarchy. She knew her role. Her role, 110%, was to link her name to the king so that her children would be like kings and queens going forward. That's all her father wanted. She was a worthless pawn in the Game of Thrones.
Worthless pawn.
I guess she shouldn't have done away with her husband then.
Yeah, worthless pawn. I'll give you that. But I would say she had an idealized version of what her expectations were. I mean, we heard right from the start that Robert Baratheon, not Robb Stark, Robert Baratheon had always wanted Lyanna Stark. And so as far as what she knew she needed to be, I don't think she had a clue in that relationship, because she says multiple times in those last season episodes that she just was like always kind of put shunt to the side, and that he would be constantly caught with other women. And so I think you're right that she was raised to think, I'm going to have, be a queen, and our kids will be princes and princesses, and this will be the start of a great new dynasty. But as far as she knew what her expectations were 110%, I don't know if she ever did in their marriage.
When you say it like that too, it actually makes think of the exact same words we were using to describe Theon when he thought he knew what he was walking into, what he thought he was raised to do, and then it was completely different.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you, Gary. I'm just trying to understand. Like, I think that there's multiple layers there.
I think that there's a deeper layer in that. Going back to the original conversation of like, would you like that? I think Cersei's trying to, or maybe she's trying to diffuse what is a real fucking awkward conversation, because she needs to figure out where Sansa sits. She needs to gauge Sansa's reaction to this, which I guess would be also assuming that, like, Sansa gets to hear like a fucking 12-year-old say, yeah,
I lost your audio there, bud.
I think Gary got bleeped just by the world in general.
Yeah, your audio's gone.
Hello?
Now it's
Hear
there.
me? Okay. I was saying that maybe Cersei was using the question as to gauge how Sansa responded.
That'll bite.
Like,
So I disagree with that. I think that Sansa gets bullied, or I don't know if bullied's the right way to put it because it's a little bit more extreme than that. But she gets attacked by several different people for different reasons, and I think we're trying to attribute one general reason for it, and it's not there. Joffrey's a psychopath. That's the only reason he needs. He's a psychopath, and he wants someone to hurt. And just like Gary, he wants someone to hurt. But I think that for Cersei's doing it for a classic bullying technique. Cersei, I agree, feels like she's lost control of her life. And what do you do when you feel like you've lost control of your life? You bully someone because you have power over them now. You have strength over them. You might not know where you stand in the court, but you know where you stand with that other person, and you are above them. And that's what you get, the classic bullying when you get from high school, from college, everyday real world doesn't go away.
bonus crazy theory about Cersei losing control is that maybe she's trying to bully Sansa so that she can control Sansa when Sansa becomes queen. She can be the Queen of Thorns, Lady of Thorns.
I don't think she's thinking that far ahead.
Indoctrination.
Indoctrination.
I have a question since we're talking. Just again, I have a question if you get to me later, Tyler. But just hypothesizing here on the Cersei and Sansa dynamic. I mentioned earlier about the depths. We're kind of understanding the depths that some of these characters are at, and they're understanding their own, like as they're talking to each other too. I don't want to take it to a dark place, but what do we think Sansa's mental state is right here? Is she saying, I'll agree to whatever so I can survive the day? Or do we think she's like contemplating, just getting out of this, even if it means I take my own life? Do you think she's at that place?
I think she is. You don't? You guys don't? All right.
No, not yet, I don't think. Like, she's still trying to survive. The fact that she gets hopeful.
Like, I think she understands that she's not gonna die, but it's gonna be a tough couple weeks, and she's gotta let this Rob's rebellion sort of blow over until things will be alright.
Wow, that's the most romanticized version of her situation I have ever heard.
I'm just laughing at Steven's face.
Her brother is winning every argument, so she does or every battle.
True.
So she's got some reasons
to hope.
So I don't know. I don't think she's at that point.
If she can survive until Rob gets in Idolized World, until Rob can get to King's Landing, she just needs to survive. Like, she knows, if she truly believes in her brother more than she believes in Joffrey, she's gonna have to hold it out because she knows that Rob will win the day.
I don't agree with that real quick. I don't agree with that. I think that, and I'm not trying to jump ahead too far, but she's in a situation where Theon finds himself much later in the books or in the TV show as well, where she is broken. She is not trying to hold out for any reason. She's not trying to... I mean, if there was a way out, she'd take it, but she doesn't see a way out. She is broken. She is doing what is told of her because that is all she knows to do.
She literally had a chance to end her own life early on, and she chose not to take it. She could have just pushed Joffrey over the edge of the thing and herself as well, yeah.
I think we made a comment about that too, that was something she probably was moving to do.
She was going to jump. Yeah.
The mountain stepped in front of her, I think.
The hound. Yeah, Gaines correct, motherfucker.
I think I'm with Steven more so. I don't know if she's like at that door to open it, but I think that despair is rough. Her handmaiden nurse, her godmother type person essentially was beheaded, and she saw her own dad's death and then his head on a spike. It's despair does some really gnarly things to people, and I don't want to linger on any. You all know I'm a more optimistic person, but trying to understand the psyche of that particular moment, I think that she's just tearing up, silently sitting at that table, realizing this is how I die.
I would say probably she's not at the the suicidal door that you keep alluding to here. I think she's just very, very traumatized. To go back to all the points that you mentioned, though, of she saw basically her house members basically get killed, slaughtered, beheaded. She saw her dad die. She assumes her sister is dead. That came down to her with her in King's Landing, even though they've never found her and stuff like that. And she's surrounded by enemies basically everywhere within the city. She can't really even trust anybody who seems to reach out to be maybe a helping hand for the most part. So I think she is probably in the lower realms of being just highly traumatized, highly depressed, highly in despair and stuff like that. But I think she's kind of playing this part to just kind of survive for now, basically just doing what she can to kind of make it to the next day.
We had another note here about Sansa, and that was her relationship with Shae, who doesn't get a lot of screen time, but Shae is introduced as Sansa's new handmaiden. Handmaid?
Yeah.
And my question was, do you think Shae will be good company for Sansa as she's kind of isolated and alone? And Shae has no reason to be mean to Sansa or to belittle her. Shae's just trying to fucking get by. Like,
He's also broken, but in a different way.
Right.
I don't think they are good company.
King's Landing by someone she loved who is kind of trying to bottle her up and keep her on the DL. And so then the inverse of that, going to the dark corner, is, or do you just think that Sansa's happy to have someone else she can punish? Someone she can have power over?
I think that's... You don't think so? I think that's the...
I'd say confide in before I'd use the phrase punish as well.
Yeah,
I don't think there's a mean bone in Sansa's body.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean to.
Yeah, even in the... Oh, no, you're fine, sorry. Even in the books, like, she is just... Tyrion notes that at one point, like, she is just, like, the perfect lady. She is nice to everyone that serves her, everyone she meets. Like, I think she's just too good of a girl for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thinking about it,
I thought an interesting fact is that you see this one scene where up to that point Sansa's just emotionally getting the shit kicked out of her, and then she's just like, she's stressed because like anyone is, she's just stressed because she doesn't want to have to fucking explain to somebody how to change a chamber pot or brush her hair or when to do these things. Like, she doesn't want to micromanage. Like, she just wants shit to get done so that one thing in her fucking life is to the level of expectation on a day-to-day basis, and she's just, like, flipping out. So, is it that basically is like, is Shae good, or Shae someone to give her perspective on, you can't even depend on that somebody's gonna know how to brush your fucking hair, like...
I mean, and to be fair, if I was at a castle, I would kind of expect the staff there to be, like, aces at their job. Not literally brand new and no one's trained them. I'd be unimpressed if someone showed up at work that way.
Sure.
Hey, what do you want me to do?
Give it
You should do your job.
Yeah.
We'll never visit this castle again.
Employees sucked.
4 stars.
1 of 5 stars. Decoration is horrible. Bleeds everywhere.
Staff turnover high.
I do like, since you bring up Shae, Gary, the show is, and again, people who have seen the entirety of this show may think differently, but this show does a really good job of writing the opposite of what you kind of expect. Like, we just spent, 20 minutes talking about how great we think Tyrion is, but, he's masterful at this game. He knows all the ins and outs. He has no weaknesses. And then we talk about Shae, like he's screwed, right?
No, I agree. I think you're right.
There are weaknesses, and no one is technically safe, because we know from last season how he feels about Shae, and if she is found out by Cersei at this point in the story, she quite literally has him by the balls.
Yeah.
Us watching this part, Since we've seen the first entire season, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at this naive girl. She has no clue what's coming in for her.
Mm-hmm.
Shay is like us watching the first season thinking it's gonna be fine.
Right.
So Shay just a good outside perspective on some of these dynamics, like the fact that Cersei and why am I forgetting the imp's name?
Tyrion.
Cersei and Tyrion have this contentious relationship as siblings, or that they have to keep secrets from one another. Like, is Shay a good barometer for the audience? Like,
I don't know.
I don't think so, and maybe I'm not giving Shay enough credit here, but I don't see Shay as a reliable interpreter of any sort of opinion except for her own wants and needs, and her own wants and needs are very sky high for someone who is just a random prostitute who just happened to get brought along by these other people.
never been confirmed.
Gary, people who have tasted my cooking have remarked on how good a whore I am.
Oh, good whore. Yeah, I guess I retract my previous statement.
I think Tyrion has a line to Varys as well about you should try her fish pie or something like that. Yeah.
As a question to people who've read the books more than I have, is Shay very well fleshed out in the books?
Shay isn't she a combination of like two different characters in the book?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, people start getting
I don't remember who the second one is.
combined a little bit.
Yeah, they do.
There's one that's more heavily her, and then there's another character also, but I don't remember. I really need to reread these books. Gotta finish my own series first.
Curious of like a character that just sort of I think it's still left ambiguous, like what her full backstory is before she meets Tyrion. Like there's the drinking game where it's like, oh well, like she came from a shitty family and this that. And it's like no, she came from an okay family, but other than that, her history is left moderately ambiguous as to how she got to that point.
I do think that actually is a good mirror for the audience themselves, who sees this woman who was a prostitute, and we automatically assume, oh, she has to have gone to just the lowest depths. She must have been from this poor family, gotten sold into slavery or something like that. And it's not true at all. She just happened to just want to do that. She wanted to achieve a better life through prostitution. And it's not something you really interact with very often, or at least maybe this is for me.
Do you think that's an attempt to make her more relatable to the audience? If she was just like a fucking whore, like you'd be like, oh, well, sorry, you have to be a handmaiden.
I think it makes her more enigmatic. I don't think it makes her more relatable at all. She becomes more of just a black box that you don't understand.
Sure. Yeah, the show writes a lot of these characters, a lot of these storylines different than how you think they'll go. The imp that everyone, quite literally looks down on is the most knowledgeable, well-spoken, eloquent person in the room in pretty much every instance. Shay isn't just some, dumb whore. She's, interesting and I can't see that. She's interesting and can carry a great conversation and give Tyrion a run for his money. I didn't see that, Gary. What did it say?
What enigmatic was?
Enigmatic.
Interpreter understand mysterious.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
You and your $10 words. Keep it cheap. Anyway, Nick, you can continue. Sorry.
No, that's it. Just I agree with that. No, I think it's better. She's a richer character for the story, the way that she's described in the show, which is what we're watching. And I haven't read the books, but yeah, she's a richer character for having more depth to her.
I'm almost to the end of my notes for episode 3. I have one last one. Anybody else have any other notes?
We covered all mine.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a short note, and that was I made a note that at the end of the episode you see Theon burn it. He was writing a letter to Robb, and then he burns it.
Oh,
So
right.
it's supposed to be the
Choice.
the visual indicator that Theon made a decision. He picked a side. So that was all I had. So unless anyone else, we can move to episode 4.
Nick, you kept mentioning you had questions. Did we cover everything?
No, that was good. Yeah, no, I had a couple things similar to what you all brought up, but they were more eloquently poised from you.
Oh, he's just trying to make us feel good.
All right, well, with that, then we'll roll into episode 4, Garden of Bones, and here's the synopsis according to IMDb. Lord Baelish arrives at Renly's camp just before he faces off against Stannis. Daenerys and her company are welcomed into the city of Karth. Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie find themselves imprisoned at Harrenhal. So to kind of start off with just some of my notes here. I made this comment here, and this is something I've read online too a bunch of times before. That Peter Baelish's accent is just all over the place whenever he's talking. He's got this kind of draw to his voice sometimes when he's talking to some people, like a southern draw, or like a slight, maybe not quite Scottish accent, but that kind of region there. He talks sometime a little bit. Maybe it's more like the Boston accent or something like that, because I know he played the character played a character in The Wire on another HBO show. We also get a new actor playing the Mountain, which this guy doesn't look correct at all. The guy who was the first Mountain looked much better than this dude did. He just looks like a tall, thin dude. And yeah.
Okay, so where does the Mountain show up? Just out of curiosity, is he in the scene where they get to Harrenhal?
The Mountain?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's they're all so Arya, Gendry, and Hot Pie are in that cell, basically prisoners, where they come in to choose who they're going to torture that day, and the Mountain happens to be one of the characters who shows up there.
Before or after the Lord Lannister shows up?
Lord Tywin? It's before.
With him.
I think it's right before Tywin shows up there. He happens to be there, and that's when that's when Hot Pie is playing that stupid game where if he looks him right in the eyes, he won't choose him that day. Him and that other crazy.
Everyone else avoids eye contact and leaves, and he's just staring up at him.
Yeah. And then he ends up pissing himself there too, standing there.
Did he get chosen though? Did he get chosen?
He didn't, but the other kid who was playing the stare in the eyes game did.
Yeah, the one who taught him. He said he told him to do it. Why does he stare? Because that's what he told him to do, and he never gets picked. And then he picks the guy who's staring, and he just pisses himself.
Right. I half wondered if the Mountain was like, "Oh, you got another guy to do it? We're gonna nip this one in the bud right now."
Right.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I'm glad you guys caught that. I did not catch it at all.
I didn't either.
The Mountain was in this episode, or a character
I don't even think he's called out specifically. Maybe I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty for sure.
I think you're right.
His name is Sir Gregor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It is the Mountain, but they don't quite say the Mountain.
Yeah.
You just got to catch it.
Nick, by chance,
Yes.
with you and your World of Ice and Fire book there, Harrenhal is a much bigger discussed thing, I think, in the book than it is really in the show. Do we have a little bit of history that you're able to kind of provide on Harrenhal for us?
If someone knows more than me, please feel free to interject. But a short elevator pitch on Harrenhal is that it was made by Lord Harren the Black many, many years ago, long way before the Targaryens even took over and solidified Westeros as one realm. And Harrenhal kind of was in the middle of Westeros and kind of ruled out of the Riverlands, and pretty much was just this massive, massive monstrosity. I want to say Lord Harren originally had ties back to the Ironborn, and ruled essentially just like the same, was rough, brutal, had a bunch of slaves and people build his castle, which is why Harrenhal is just so massive. I can't remember if the show really showed it, but it's tall and it's black is one of the main things about Harrenhal, and that is from the Targaryens. Lord Harren kind of said, "I have this massive fortress. The Targaryen threat, you're not going to take me out," and just said, "I'm going to stay in my castle forever." And Aegon Targaryen, when he first conquered the Seven Kingdoms, said, "Fine, you can stay in your castle." And the story in this book, if I remember right, is he like flew up into the sun as high as he could, and then made several big swoops down onto Harrenhal, and just his dragon, Balerion, the Black Dread, just roasted Harrenhal, and that is why the castle looks as mangled and twisted and black as it is. I think the book has something written to the effect of like, yeah, the stone won't burn, but a castle is not made solely of stone. It's made of wood, and the stone can be heated hot enough that the nearby objects and certainly the people within roast like a pressure cooker. And there's a few parts here. If I can't remember now that I'm thinking about the environment more so than the characters. In this episode, if you see parts of Harrenhal, it looks like it was bombed out or it looks destroyed. And certainly in some of the future episodes too, I think when they reference it, you can see that it looks destroyed. And that's because, yeah, Aegon destroyed it way back when he first conquered 300-ish years ago.
And the Harrenhal is actually melted as well, slightly. That heat from those dragons, I mean, like what you said, rocks don't burn, but they do melt. And the heat from, I believe, Balerion was so hot that it melted some of the rocks around there. So it has this weird, like, swoopy look to it. And that's what I got from the books, at least. Amanda Tyler, is that correct?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of points there, actually, Nick. It was a particularly grim story to read that I read and was like, yep, never going to Harrenhal.
Yeah, I mean it's a still standing castle. It's a massive fortress, so it's huge, but it's not a place that people want necessarily, which is why I think in the previous comments when we were talking about Tyrion, promising it to Littlefinger, it's like, oh wow, I get to have a whole castle to myself, but he's not like, yes, done, because it's it's like it's haunted almost, as destroyed as it is. Yeah, it's just north of the God's Eye. Here's the map I was looking for. The God's Eye is sort of in the lower part of the Riverlands, and dead center Westeros is the God's Eye, and the Isle of Face is in the middle of the God's Eye. And just north along the King's Road that comes up from King's Landing is Harrenhal, right alongside the road.
Which explains why it's so absolutely strategic. And everyone should care that because it's so close to the King's Road, it would be able to disrupt supplies if you go further north. You have to own it to go north or south.
Absolutely. Definitely strategic.
All right. Thanks for that history lesson there, Nick. I'm going to touch on the first part, my question here. So, Tyrion and Bronn, I think, are having a conversation about Tyrion's nephew, Joffrey there, wondering why is he such a little prick here all the time here, everything like that. And just kind of wondering, like, maybe Bronn, I think, suggests, he might be, air quotes, backed up there. So Tyrion is kind of a way to help Joffrey, buys him prostitutes, basically, and sends him to his chamber, which doesn't turn out very well for the prostitutes, especially after Joffrey learns that Tyrion sent them to him, specifically. So I'm kind of wondering here, not to get like too in depth into the scene, we don't really have to, because it's kind of an ugly scene there to kind of go through, because Joffrey basically makes these women kind of torture one another, or one of them torture the other one there, kind of. Otherwise, Joffrey was going to shoot them both with his crossbow.
Minus the kind of.
Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering here, like, was Joffrey kind of doing that more to spite Tyrion, or is he just kind of, again, being a bully, pulling the wings off of flies, just being a prick, an even bigger prick?
Yes.
The latter.
Say both.
Asking if he's a sadist or he's trying to send a message. I had a different way, and I had it was Same question. Was Joffrey getting off? Was he aroused by the situation of just pure violence?
I
think
agree.
so.
I entirely agree.
That I'd never thought of it that way either. There, I guess, and Gary. So I'm glad you're the Joffrey supporter there to open our eyes to.
Like, to just fucking beat them until they cry, and then he's like, "God, I have such a huge boner right now."
Gary, can you say that?
You
without
almost
the
see it in
smile
his
on your
eyes
face?
as he's doing. Sorry. Yeah, you almost see it in the actor's eyes as he's doing it. And I mean, credit to the kid that played Joffrey, because this.
Exactly.
And I was actually thinking about this as they did it. How would a kid not come away scarred from having to act through this?
Right.
But going past that, I guess even a little bit, you could see in his eyes just the pleasure that he's getting from having these women absolutely torture each other, and other words can be used for what they are doing, and
So is
it's sickening.
Is it implied that he's doing the same action of like spanking someone with a I don't know what, a scepter, or is it that the one had to literally beat the other one to kill the other one or beat her to death? Because he just says bring her to Tyrion when you're done.
I think she's still alive. I think she's just beaten basically severely.
Anyway, that was at a rewatch. I wondered if maybe that was the original intent, was that Joffrey wanted one of them to kill the other one as like just an absolutely fuck you, like.
And I think, and you might want to cut this part out after I say it, because I'm not sure this is even. I'm pretty sure he has one of the women.
Yeah,
I'm pretty certain about that.
I think so too. I think that, yeah, like some people just want to watch the world burn is the thought that keeps kind of coming in my mind. I think Joffrey is finding pleasure in other people's torment. Well, here I'll spin it this way. You know, we were kind of joking a little bit earlier tonight about a D&D reference. I totally think Joffrey is lawful evil. His actions are chaotic, but he has plans to hurt people. I think if he wanted to hurt those people, he could have just shot them with the crossbow. He wanted the torment in it, and to me that says devil more than it says demon.
It's about control.
I
it's not about
disagree.
like.
Sorry.
It's not about like the fact that because he's a king, like in the hierarchy of power, like these two prostitutes can't do anything. Even if they can overpower him, they're gonna die because like he's the king. Like they have to do what he says. So is it just pure power, like to belittle those so far beneath you, or is it just being a dick? Anyway.
Latter. What were you saying, Stephen?
I think he's chaotic evil. I think that he's rolling the dice on what he wants to do. And if that means he just wants to torture and then show everyone how he can torture, that's what it is. He doesn't really have a plan behind it. He just wants to show people he can. I don't think there's any lawfulness. There's no structure behind it. There's no morality or, I mean, even lack of morality. There's no ethic or morality behind it that creates a structure for him to go off of. I mean, if you're going to say something like lawful evil, I'd say Cersei. She has a structure behind her. She has these ethics that make her horrible, but in an understandable way.
I think too, we touched on this point quite a bit with when it came to Joffrey and some of maybe our earlier conversations, that it goes back to that conversation he had with Cersei about what to do if the northern men rise up and rebel against you. Joffrey said he would basically kill them all. He doesn't really have a plan. He is just evil for the kind of the sake of being evil. Whereas, like you kind of mentioned there, that Cersei at least pretends to have somewhat of an idea or kind of like a knowledge of the chess pieces of what each action might have as a consequence to that action there. But then still, Joffrey, like we've kind of said, I think multiple times here too, is he's just evil for the sake kind of being evil.
Question.
I suppose I like all that. Yeah. What were you gonna say, Gary?
First question, is Joffrey a germaphobe or someone who doesn't like being touched? I noticed in the early part of the scene, like the lady came up and he's like, just touch her. And then he's like, I'm gonna go over here. And the entire interaction, he distanced himself physically from the other people. It was just a random.
He's a voyeur.
He's a voyeur. He likes to watch. I don't know about germaphobe, but I don't know about germaphobe, but it is interesting. I mean, you mentioned earlier, is he getting aroused out of this? He doesn't want any physical contact. In fact, the whole time that he's engaged to Sansa, we never see him and her kiss or make out or anything. I don't even think they hold hands. When Lady attacks Joffrey along the lake, they're just walking next to each other. They're not even holding hands or some sort of we're betrothed type thing. Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting proposal. Maybe not germaphobe, but definitely maybe kind of tying back to our comments about Renly, perceives himself as king. He's above physical contact with lessers in his mind.
All right, well, that's kind of all I had for that question there. I'll throw it over to Steven then, I think, to start off with some of his questioning.
All right. So I kind of had 3 questions in kind of a little bit of a deeper way. The first one actually stems from when they're at Harrenhal, and I hate to pull this, maybe not so much a question as a comment, but the idea that it really shows the barbarity of torture, and something that still some people today say, well, you can torture. I mean, if it's a bad enough enemy, you can torture him to get information out of him. And you see what this torture to get information out of someone really happens here, and it gets nothing. There's no reason for they're not going to get any good information out of them. They're going to torture you until you die. You're just doing it to hurt people. And I think it's something that when people watch this episode, they should kind of take a look at their views on torture. And if you view that you should be able to torture your enemy combatants or anything like that, you're not going to get good information out of them, just like what's happening here. It's going to be very brutal. It's going to be horrible. And that's exactly what happens there. I don't know if anyone disagrees with me on that, or
I agree wholeheartedly.
They were asking who's the Gendry the same questions they asked the first person.
Yep.
And we've already established that Gendry, like, they didn't even have a background of who their fuck they were torturing. So they didn't do any basic research. It was just like they were told they had a quota of information they needed to get. Like,
that's it.
You need to get more information. And basically, we'll reward you if you can get us a nugget of information that'll help us find the Brotherhood. But they're just throwing stones and throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Seeing if somebody just can't take it and blabs something important.
That's exactly it, too. I completely agree with you. They are trying to... They want to get a quota of information. And how do you get that quota of information? Torture. It doesn't matter what the information is. Like you say, they ask the same questions over and over. They're just trying to meet a quota. They gain nothing by doing it. They just do it because they are, I don't know, gets their systematic processes taken care of.
It empties the dungeon, but before they kill people out of the dungeon, they ask some questions. So, I don't know.
I think, too, not to touch too much on the books, and you can probably correct me, Amanda, here. I'm pretty for sure these people who are doing the torturing in Harrenhal are basically men who are underneath the banner of Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, and his men and company basically are known not to be very nice people. They are very, very brutal, much like their the knight they follow of Gregor Clegane. They're very brutal people.
They refer the mountain is referred to as somebody's wild dog, mad dog.
Tywin's mad dog.
Tywin's mad dog.
Because they're all reporting to Tywin in the end, but Tywin's not there, so they're taking their cue from their leader, and it's the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And when Tywin shows up, and like suddenly everything changes, and I'm sitting here trying to decide if I suddenly like this guy or not, even though I've been rooting against him all this time.
So maybe is there much background of the mountain in the books without going forward in the books? Like,
I don't think till later. I think it only just talks about a little bit of the brother relationship between the Hound and the mountain.
All right. What else you got, Steven?
My second thing was just on the diplomatic perspective of this episode, specifically with and going back last episode a little bit too, but there seems to be a lot of people sending out diplomatic representatives that are just a one person envoy. They're not groups of people that might hold stronger or more, I guess, strong say. And you see that with obviously, oh my God, I'm only remembering his other name. Sent to the Iron Isles. What's his name?
Theon.
Theon sent by himself as an envoy to the Iron Isles, which was a poor decision. Catelyn Stark sent by herself as an envoy to Renly, which, again, I don't think that was a great decision because she shows herself to be a very poor diplomat during the negotiation with Renly, basically chiding him, making herself a pest, trying to shame him. None of the things that you want to do if you want to gain an ally. And it seems to be kind of the standard diplomatic practice in the Westeros, just to send like one single person, not a diplomatic like legation sort of thing, to do your diplomacy, to do your negotiations.
Right.
Well,
I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Sent by Rob. So really, is that
that's a good point.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the. Go ahead, Gary.
Just a reflection on how inexperienced Rob is in politics, and because he sends the two people he has the longest relationship with next to him. He sends Theon, who he grew up with, and his mother. Because other than that, he has his bannermen, who he doesn't know as well and doesn't know if they would be a good representative of his needs, because around him, characters introduced, the guy who loses his finger, we're introduced to Lord Bolton this episode. So we don't have, none of his bannermen, I think, usually get names other than the couple lords. So like, but if the ones that are there are the ones you'd want to have as battle commanders, so.
Yeah, and I kind of think like he had to send somebody as an emissary. I kind of get sending his mom because she was a person that these people knew and respected already. She was, of course, like she was known by them, whereas his bannerman, like you said, he doesn't know them as well. Can he trust them to negotiate on his behalf? At least he knows her interest is in line with his, obviously.
Mm-hmm. And then she does a horrible job of it.
She does do a horrible job of it, because when she negotiates the twins, she does a much better job of it. Like, actually understands the negotiating part. Whereas here, she just berates. I don't understand.
There's I think a separation between, like, you know, the old gods and the new. The old way of doing things and the new way since Robert's Rebellion. Like, when she's at the twins, Catelyn says, "I've known Lord Frey since I was a kid." It's like, oh yeah, we know each other. We got history. We'll be good. Everything's fine. It's like maybe, 30 years ago or something when she was a child, but now, like, he's aging. He wants to establish something that his line will progress forever. So he's already aligned himself, and maybe doing other deals, because it just seemed, I don't know, it seemed like something was there when he was talking about, yeah, you get free pass. Everything's fine. Go for it. because he's got his own demons. Likewise, when he sends Theon, it's the difference that Robb is a great warrior and military tactician, but like you keep saying, Stephen, he doesn't know diplomacy. So yeah, like Gary's mentioned, he's sending the most knowledgeable in his eyes person that he can. We have the luxury of, the omniscient perspective that's a poor choice. But I think in his mind, that's his best option, is sending these people.
Theon, does Robb send Theon, or does Theon suggest that he go to the Iron Islands?
Theon goes, and I think Balon, like his mom was against it, wasn't she, right from the start?
Yeah, she was.
She's like, do not send him back to Balon. Balon will turn the first chance turn him the first chance he gets. And that's literally what happens, I believe.
I don't know. You guys honestly don't give Catelyn very much credit. Like, I guess I didn't see that she was a total failure in the negotiations. Like,
she's
respects like Eddard Stark, and so by extension, Renly respects Catelyn Stark. Like,
this is true. I mean, maybe what I called her a failure at it because all I saw was her rating him. But like, we haven't seen her walk away from this. Like, in the books, she does come away with an agreement that like Renly is totally cool with Robb Stark being king in the North as long as he just agrees to call him like the High King or something. So maybe she is actually decent at it.
Well, in the movie, the only thing that happens, or in the show, the only thing that happens is she gets sent away and not to be able to talk to him because she's berated him so much, telling him that he's playing at war while her son fights. I mean,
sure.
Why would you want to talk to someone like that?
I think the public spectacle, is there a certain amount, because the conversation happens in his court, so she doesn't have a conversation in private with him. She has a conversation in amongst the elite of his circle, which are the people who are watching this melee. So that's she making a spectacle of like, even though I respect you enough to come to you to ask for help, but you need to respect that like I think she gets asked like, oh, well, how is your son winning yet? And she says, I would never like give this information out publicly. Like, I'm not an idiot.
Yeah, she does do a better job in the books than I was thinking of giving her credit for. Because in the show, I saw her call both of them fools, both kings fools, in public, which is something that's never going to go over well with a king. And I was like, you idiot, like, there goes your chance. But in the book, actually, she does do a much better job, so I should give her credit for that, because in that case, she got everything that Robb Stark sent her to do. She got an agreement, she got an alliance. She was just berating on the TV show.
Come down to poor writing or trying to, like, mash
need to make her an angry mother character. They weren't sure what else to do.
That's fair enough.
Sure, right?
And then the last thing I had, and this is going into my personal biases, we see what a psychopath freaking Daenerys can be already.
Knew this was coming. I knew this was coming.
You knew it was coming because I yelled about it while we were watching it.
He totally did.
In what way? Give us. We're all on the same page, I think.
She goes up to the city of Karth, the best city that ever will, or whoever was or will be.
Yep.
And she basically just acts like it's her prerogative to be already let in there. Oh, of course, she should already. Wait, you're not going to let me in there? I didn't give you anything. I didn't give you any reason to. But why aren't you going to let me in there? Fine, if you're not going to let me in there, I'm going to kill you all, and you just wait. I'm going to murder every single one of you. Bloodthirst, and even the person, one of the member of the 13, turns around and goes, "Oh, and you are certainly a Targaryen." She is. She's 100% a Targaryen, and she's a psychopath.
Going back to the previous conversation about family and upbringing, like the only role model she had growing up was
brother.
Mm-hmm.
Like
he's a stable individual.
So that's how she learned to communicate. And then the next role model she had in her life was Khal Drogo, who communicated by being a strong warrior. So now she's put it kind of suddenly hoisted as a leader, and I think this is an important step on her character arc, that she had to go from like having nothing to being literally at like 2 days away from just dying and having her whole cause ruined. Like, but yeah, I think it's an important part of her character arc that she went there in good faith, and they gave her rider water to come back and invited them out, but then just seems like what the hell? Like, we came here because we were told you were gonna, bring us in with open arms, and this was not what I expected. And her right-hand man warns her of like, watch out here. I can see that you're gonna fucking spit fire, but just calm down. And she doesn't listen. So,
well, and she was asked to show her dragons, and she decided, nope, I'm not going to do that because I have more blah, blah, blah.
I took that a different way. I took that as she didn't show her dragons because she was afraid she was going to get massacred on the spot. Like, if she shows her dragons and her entire Khalasar is, like, dehydrated, weak, and, like, ready to die of dehydration, like, she has no way to defend her dragons. Her dragons aren't battle ready yet, so all she can do is run. So she's trying to keep her cards close to the vest, is what I read it as. Others' opinions? Was she just being a cocky bitch, or?
Yeah, like, I honestly, Stephen and I have discussed Daenerys a lot before. We've got very differing opinions, but like, I was able to reason out everything she acted like in this thing. However, watching it again with this other perspective in mind, I was able to see it kind of both ways. So I don't know. I think it can fit all those points. I think she has a reason. She's desperate. She's dying. She's been stuck in a desert. She can see her cause dying before her eyes. She can see her life dying. At the same time, she went more overboard than I would have. Granted, I'm not her. It was really hard to argue, Stephen, that he was just completely wrong, that she didn't go a little unhinged. I was reasoning it out every step of the way. I was like, oh, it's because of this, it's because of this. But at the same time, she did go more. It is interesting.
Also, are the rest of the 13 fleshed out in the book? I know moving forward, the main guy talks, the guy who cuts his hand talks, and the creepy bald wizard talks.
I think
there might be like one more person max. Not very many.
Talks or has any interactions. Yeah. Like, but there's 13, so there's literally over 50% of the people that are unnamed, like the whatever SAG or whoever pays actors to be in movies. As soon as they speak, you have to pay them more.
Gary, it's the best city that ever was or will be. They have better things to do than to talk to you.
You don't even get like a let's go have a little huddle back here. It's like, nope. One guy speaks for all of us. Somehow, goddamn telepathically.
It's fair. That's a good point.
Maybe they talked before they came out of the door. Like, all right, we're going to tell her no, right? Everyone agree? All right, good. You go tell her.
Anyway.
Is that everything for you then, Stephen?
That's everything for me.
All right. Amanda, how about you lead us on?
Let's see. Stephen got one of mine already. We shouldn't have watched these episodes together. We were thinking of the same things. I thought an interesting thing was from a conversation between Stannis and Davos Seaworth. Stannis was basically, he asked him about, like, do your knuckle brings bring you luck, and the whole thing about Davos, like, he was rewarded for he was a hero and a smuggler. He was rewarded for the hero and he was punished for the smuggler. And Stannis says, the good act doesn't wash out the bad, nor the bad the good. Which I find fascinating coming from Stannis, because he's doing all of these actions that even he considers bad, because he's justifying it as going for the throne. But according to himself,
he is entitled to. Like, he just
Yeah, and also according to himself, the good act doesn't, the bad acts they don't wash each other out. So how is he gonna? How does he justify this in his mind? Like I feel like it's a constant battle in himself. He, for the most part, overrules, but
He's a conflicted character. I think for the entire run in the show, like at this point, you haven't even been introduced to his wife.
No, not yet.
no,
No, I
I
don't
think
think
we've
so.
seen her in the distance, but that's it.
Yeah.
So he's just a conflicted character throughout the show.
I think that
A horrible human being.
yeah, I think he is. I think that he's like on the spectrum of characters. If you put everyone in Game of Thrones as like this person is over here, this person's over here. I see Stannis as the opposite of Tyrion, where Tyrion sees every vantage point, knows all the angles, is aware of who is likely going to betray him. I see Stannis as the opposite. He's narrow-minded, focus. Whatever, the Lord of Light, sure, whatever you want, as long as I get the throne. We need to align ourselves with so and so. Yeah, whatever you say, as long as they're going to be, as long as you trust this person. Do you trust this pirate you're going to sign me up with? Not really. He shoots him a look and he says, "I trust him good enough." He's all right, sure, whatever you say then. Like he's just wants the throne. So as far as what his goals are, I think he's conflicted, but it's all about just getting the throne. Like you said, Gary, which he defines. He interrupts several people when they bring it up as should be mine by right. My brother has 100,000 troops, which should be loyal to me. Like it's not that these other people are against him; it's that they've stolen his resources.
Middle child syndrome.
Yeah.
So I'll go with 2 points to go back to Amanda's question there of how does he justify this? I think it's kind of again, I know Stephen maybe talked about this a lot when we were talking about Stannis. Is he sees himself kind of above his own law probably in his quest to get the throne. The ends basically justify the means of whatever he has to do to basically put himself on the Iron Throne. He kind of will do basically as long as it serves him the greater good of getting to the throne there. Maybe that's maybe it too, how he justifies it. The one bad thing he doesn't view as being a great enough thing towards the good thing of him getting the Iron Throne. So it's just again, like the good doesn't outweigh the good doesn't take away the bad doesn't take away the good. He's probably just viewing the bad as being such a small part of the process of getting him the good of the Iron Throne. And then to go back, I wanted to touch briefly on this, Nick, that you mentioned this. I kind of disagree with the Stannis and Tyrion being kind of on equal footing there, opposite footings there.
Not allowed.
I would say Stannis is probably, again, if you were to imagine the straight line of everybody on one end or the other, Stannis is probably more in the middle there. He's neither. He's not really good. He's more of maybe like neutral, but not like true neutral. He kind of wavers back and forth on both sides of the line of being good and bad there. Of again, this going back to his thought of the ends justify the means there of he thinks the good of getting him to the throne, or he spared Davos, who we all end up liking for most part, I would imagine, as a character, which is good, but he took the knuckles, took the fingers off of Davos' hand for the bad stuff that he did there. Whereas Tyrion, though, is more of, you said some part in there that kind of struck in my mind, but then now I can't remember it there. But I think Tyrion is definitely looking out ahead, but I wouldn't claim that he is the complete expert at it. Like I would say Tyrion, again, it goes back to Tyrion knows how to play the game of Thrones, but just knowing how to play it doesn't always make you a good player at it too.
Is Devil's Advocate, who would you name as a more masterful negotiator than Tyrion at this point in the story?
At this point in the story, I think Tyrion is viewed as probably being the good negotiator because he's the new person coming into the game. And like I mentioned, I think probably earlier in this conversation, he's the new player in the Game of Thrones there in Westeros, whereas there's already a bunch of established people there. So who is maybe the more masterful player though? It's probably somebody like Varys or Baelish there. People, I mean, obviously we don't really see a lot of what they do until like later on a lot of their plans come to fruition. But I mean, Varys is still there for a reason. Baelish is still there for a reason. They are good at kind of what they
I'll give
do,
you that.
minus the fact that Baelish is probably not the great master of coin that everyone thinks he is. But they're playing the game kind of in their own way, in such a masterful way that they're not really being noticed by the higher up echelon of society, who is basically playing the game in such a wild, reckless fashion.
And to echo that, I mean, also, and not going too far ahead in the series, but they also have more staying power. As it turns out to be.
More established.
Not necessarily more established, but more staying power. When stuff goes down and everyone's status is affected, their status is affected far less than what happens to Tyrion.
They're taking the safe bets.
Not even really maybe the safe bets, but maybe the more calculated bets too. Like, they're doing stuff that they know will probably work. They aren't. It's not rocking the boat really as much as, again, like Tyrion and Cersei are comparatively.
A little more secretive bets. They're working under the table, whereas like Tyrion very publicly made known that the 3 people he asked where Marcella was going, when the charade played out, all 3 of them knew that like they were being played, but they all, like, the other 2 understood why they were being played, whereas the bearded creepy guy
Pycelle.
was just completely appalled. Like, he thought he was in the right. Like,
I think though, even too, the other 2 got something out of it when they realized they were slightly being played, to kind of put them more into Tyrion's corner, or as Tyrion thought. I can't completely remember what Baelish got out of it really here, but I know Varys got respect for it felt like Varys got respect for Tyrion, that kind of grew into more of them 2 realizing they can kind of be an ally for one another, although not like a true complete ally like you would hope for Varys, because Varys said this, I think, to Ned before, of like, Varys is serving the realm, and he wanted to help Ned Stark because he believed Ned Stark was a good, honorable person, but because of the way Varys is playing the game, he can't jeopardize himself to help Ned in his quest to play the game.
Ned's an honorable person, and he says, I am not. Yeah. In the conversation with Tyrion. Same thing.
So yeah, Varys and Tyrion gain respect for one another, and basically Varys appreciated that he knew where Tyrion standed, like that he's ultimately he's not going to do anything stupid, and as long as you don't intentionally try to cross him, like, he pretty much sent out a ceasefire to Varys of like, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but ultimately I just need you to be on my side and not on Cersei's side. That's all I asked, is that you pass things by me first. But I forgot what Littlefinger got. I think he was part of his next deception. Oh, his next deception was that he got to bring Eddard Stark's body to Catelyn and arrange the diplomacy to trade Jaime for the girls. So that was his.
Uh-oh.
Did we? Uh-oh.
Lost Gary.
Oh!
No, Gary.
What is dead may
Just
never
felt
die.
So,
What is
felt
dead may
so
never die.
strong about it.
We may never see his likes again.
And now
we're
his
lucky.
watch has ended.
Now he's That's awesome.
I will say real quick, Nick, about the D&D kind of alignments. I will say that Stannis is lawful stupid.
Lawful stupid.
Lawful stupid. That's
I just kept going back thinking, it's like, we do talk about the morality and characters with a compass. Even if it's a broken compass, they have something that they hold to. Like we mentioned, Cersei. Yeah, with Stannis, going back to Amanda's question, it's like, I have a wife, I can't do this, and she's like, please, all right, sure. It's there's no like hard rule in the sand. He constantly steps over whatever previous thing he did. You have to say the words. I said the damn words. Well, now you have to have sex with me. Oh, all right. It's like he constantly Stannis jumps over the line that previously he thought was all right. I've done whatever. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's I want the throne. All right. Well, this justifies the means. To Tyler's point. All right, fine. But it's the constantly moving goalpost that we find out in his arc that makes it difficult for him, and I think ultimately is the beginning of what seems to be his undoing, where it's just he has to do the next thing, and then like Steven said, it's just this pattern of stupidity. You those around him can see him unraveling, but he cannot, and that's what makes him a tragic character.
Gary, do you want to kind of pick up on your conversation there? You were talking about the trading of Jaime for the sisters.
That means he didn't.
No, he does not want to.
I muted myself.
How dare you even ask that?
Did you want to elaborate on that point you made earlier? You know what? I'm out.
He said what he said, and that's what he meant.
Exactly.
Gary now?
Yep.
Hey.
Okay, so what I was saying was that what Littlefinger got out of being deceived is he got involved in the next, in a higher level of trust, like something that Tyrion could only trust. He needed somebody he could trust to not only be a delegate, to be a good delegate, but also to not spill the beans on this plan to Cersei. Because Cersei probably doesn't want to lose Sansa. She wants to keep Sansa in the fold because that's her insurance. But Tyrion just wanted to do whatever he can to get his brother back. That's all I got. Try number 3 worked.
All right. You got anything else for us, Amanda?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right. Gary, have you gone through your questions yet?
Oh, I still got a fuckload of questions. Back to Stannis. Just a quick one is that when on a rewatch, you catch that Stannis, on the conversation with Stannis and Renly, says, I'll even name you my heir as I have no natural born sons. And I kind of on a rewatch was like, why the heck did he take that offer? Like, so he's supplanted Joffrey as now he's second in line to someone who has no sons and is still like married to someone who probably can't give him any more children. So he's second in line, like.
He doesn't care about that. He just cares about the power and glory.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting kind of reflection on Renly, because that was sort of like an olive branch that wasn't a terrible olive branch. It's like, I deserve to be king. That's Stannis' first priority. I deserve to be king. Second priority is like, I don't need to like kill my brother, who I just lost one brother. I don't need to kill the other one to guarantee that I get the throne. And if Renly would have just taken the offer, it would have eliminated a lot of dead soldiers, and they could go in as a unified front. You know, Renly on the political and Stannis on the fuck shit up. But he didn't take the offer. I thought that was interesting.
I think a lot of it too was more of just kind of backhanded, a little bit more of a slightly like, I'll even name you my my heir or whatever. It kind of gives it in like an offhand, backhanded comment, like, yeah, you'll be subservient to me until I eventually die, and then you can take over.
I also
I just thought that was interesting because it's not a great offer, but it's
It
It's
is some
definitely
kind of
something.
olive branch, yeah. But I did find it interesting, like if Stannis and Renly, like their personalities were switched, or if Renly was the older one, how many of us would have had absolutely no problem being like, "Oh, Renly should be the king. It's his right." But because Stannis is so dislikable, we're all like, "Yep, nope, we don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's his right. He's not the right guy."
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was my note. It's just interesting because I was trying to do the calculus on a rewatch of like, okay, so Stannis only has a daughter, and in later seasons it kind of goes over, kind of deepens the conversation about Stannis' frustration about not having a natural born son, and how it's probably going into his deeper character, a real character flaw he has, is that he despises his wife for not giving him a son.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, any other thoughts? Otherwise, I go on to my next silly question.
Hit us with the next silly question.
So I would like all the silly questions.
In the very early part of the episode, you're introduced to Lord Bolton, and he suggests to Robb that he should torture the prisoners, and he says that the flayed man keeps no secrets. And on a rewatch, like the first time through, Lord Bolton's probably just a face to you. Like, you don't realize that he shows up in later seasons. You just assume he's just a guy who's just like, hey, you really should take... And on the first watch, you're just assuming it's a juxtaposition between Lord Bolton, who's very like, we just need to, like be brutal to these people. And then the conversation Robb has with, I forgot the character's name. The nice lady who cuts off a guy's leg.
Oh, yeah, his to be something.
Talisa?
That lady. What was
Something
her
like
name?
that.
It's like
Something
Talisa
like that.
Mager. I don't think I heard her
Talisa.
name today though.
Talisa.
On the first watch, you just assume that's a juxtaposition of Robb's morality, but knowing who Lord Bolton is, and that he is the first mention of the flayed man, which when he become more fleshed out in later seasons, you realize there's some deep embedded history in Bolton of the flayed man, so much that it's on their banner.
Bad News Bears.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was, I thought, an interesting introduction.
I think that goes back to Steven's comment earlier about torture. You know, the flayed man has no secrets because they're literally skinned alive. And at a certain point, the human body can only, no matter who you are, everybody's got a breaking point.
Yep.
And you're going to say anything to make the pain stop. So is it worth going into? I don't, it depends on what the torture is and what are you trying to get out of it. At some point, like you guys said earlier, I think that they're just going to say anything to make the pain stop. And is random stable boy from the Westerlands number 5 going to have anything of value for Robb Stark? Or is he just going to be person number 5 who's picked out of the pen and killed?
You know what? Stable boy number 5 who got his leg cut off, he probably made more money as an actor than one of the 13. Anyway, the next question I had was about Arya's bedtime list of the person.
That's a great
prayer. Scene. Yeah.
Cersei, Joffrey, Illian Payne, the Hound, Polliver, and the Mountain. I think that's the updated list up to this episode. So Cersei, I think, is just general because I don't know what she has against Cersei other than she just conspired to kill her dad. Yep. Joffrey did kill her dad. Illian Payne was the
executioner.
Her dad. The Hound, I think, is just guilty by association.
He was the brute for Joffrey for a long time.
And he killed the butcher's boy.
Yeah, he killed her friend.
That's what it was.
Polliver is in Harrenhal, and he punched the beggar lady. I don't know if he was also involved in some of the torturing earlier on. And the Mountain, because he's the mountain. I don't know if anyone likes the mountain.
Tywin Lannister likes the mountain.
Yeah.
The mountain likes the mountain.
He is a number one star performer of the month. And he's the employee of the month.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah. I do like the list. Since you bring that up, Gary, I could side tangent for a quick minute on. I really like how the list is initiated. It comes from the story that Yoren has, the guy who's leading the caravan up to the wall, and how he said like his backstory about how he killed this boy named Willem who had hurt him and his family, and how he got his revenge. And he said like he forgot the people that he was doing his list. His brother, thank you. He forgot his brother's face, and so why these names were on his list. That initial motive fades, and all he was consumed by was the vengeance at that point. But he said he could remember every little detail about Willem's face, the little cleft in his chin that drove the girls crazy, and how when he got his vengeance, they had to bury him with the axe that he dug in his head. And then that's kind of where her list comes from, because you're very right. Up to this point, the list later on in the show is kind of this driving force that becomes almost a motivation for Arya. And so it's interesting how that inception originally began.
Yeah, it is very cool because it's Arya who is still just speaking of people who are just like the juxtaposition of Sansa, who's in a position where everything went to shit for her in the last 6 months. Her dad died, her brother's gone to war, she's a captive and forced into marriage, to Arya, who is whisked away, in the protection of one or two people who know her true identity, and she's trying to figure out her place in the world, and she's trying to ask, okay, I have this deep hatred that I need to it's consuming me. So how do you deal with all that consuming anger that you have? And so that was a life lesson from a dirty old man from the Night's Watch. So anyway, that was interesting. The last question I have goes to the end of the episode on Sir Davos or the Red Woman. So if anyone else has any other questions, I can circle back.
Mine are covered. I'm good, I guess.
Okay.
My last question too is about Davos and the Red Woman, so
I'll take a swing at it then. Okay, so on my initial watch of Sir Davos and the Red Woman, it was the boat ride from wherever they were to this island, and it was sort of this some character development for both of them, because they sort of start to connect and they start to kind of understand each other. And I put the note of near the end when he sees all the magic, does he gain some respect for her because he's loyal to Stannis no matter what. That's his only loyalty to Stannis, and he doesn't really understand this this religion shit. He's just he only can believe what he sees, and then when he sees it, he's just... So does he gain some respect for this religion that he thought was bullshit? And do they start to understand one another better? So that was my question.
If you see black magic happen, you're not going to respect it more. You're going to maybe fear it more.
I agree.
And that's where I would come off of. I guess we don't actually get to see how he reacts to that after this. We just see the ghost basically go off, or the darkness or demon, whatever it happens to be that she spawned, to go off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it leaves it. But from everything that it shows us, from everything that she says about the light makes the shadows darker, none of this sounds like a positive reinforcement to me.
You can't have shadows without the light, because shadows can't exist in a dark room.
And the brighter the light, the darker the shadow.
Yes. So it's the contrast, the duality of light and dark.
So she's creating darkness.
Yes. So but anyway, it's just an interesting, like, sort of a character, because it changes what his loyalty is. It gives him more knowledge, because we're assuming that Stannis maybe saw some of this black magic, or maybe
He seems to be in on it.
Yeah, but anyway, that was just an interesting, like, character interaction that, moving forward, Sir Davos has seen this, and he can't fucking unsee it. He can't. It's gonna consume him, because he doesn't. He doesn't understand. It's probably gonna be it'll be expanded on the next episode, but anyway, I thought that was an interesting character interaction. And a boat ride, just a lot of exposition. Unlike the rest of season 1 and 2, where people are naked during exposition, so
I prefer the former.
there was some weird nudity near the end of that scene, but
Yeah.
I liked the details of when the shadow, though, is like the marks it leaves on her skin.
Yeah.
I guess
Sickening.
I didn't pick that up here quite well. I don't remember it, I guess, quite that well from it happening.
It's got an ethereal but very tangible essence to it. It's like
like it's clearly a shadow, but you're not sure if it's like real or just a shadow. And then you see that it's leaving marks on her skin. And I'm like, oh god, this thing can like hurt.
Like what Gary was saying, it's I don't. Yeah, I agree with Steven. I don't know if it's respect is maybe the right word, but definitely fearful that there's something more here than I originally thought there was.
Just sort of going from disbelief of religion at all to he's just seeing magic in real life, and it's completely undeniable to him. He can't ever go back to being like, I don't believe in what's their god? The Lord of Light.
Lord of Light.
He can't go back to not believing there's such thing as the Lord of Light. Like he has to. He can't go back to the Seven. He can't. He's seen something that he can't explain. It's gonna make him a true believer of something.
I would say one thing to point out too about that scene is it's just kind of a small touch of detail there. As you see the necklace that Melisandre is wearing, that red ruby right in the center of it is lighting up while this is all happening, kind of indicating that there's something going on there. My question to kind of veer off a little bit though, for talking about the Red Woman more there. So we kind of obviously get that Davos just doesn't like her, really. What do we kind of think though? Why does Stannis like her so much? Why is he so willing to kind of believe just everything about what she says?
Again, I think it's the ends to the means. Hey, I can give you the throne if you commit yourself and your armies and your purpose to the Lord of Light. All right, sure, because I can get the throne.
So, though, to kind of back up a bit with that, though, Stannis always kind of comes across, though, as somewhat of a, how do I want to kind of say it? Like a hard-nosed skeptic there, kind of. Like, he doesn't really believe, he as it kind of goes further on, he doesn't really seem to, necessarily believe in the Lord of Light. It's just something he's kind of, for the lack of words, kind of hitched his wagon to kind of follow along with there. He sees it's kind of something to help. So why is it the Melisandre character kind of convinces Stannis for some reason, it seems like what do we think there kind of might have been there that Stannis is just like, yeah, you're the person who's going to guide me towards my goal of the throne.
I think. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I was gonna say, where's Stannis based out of? Because I think he's maybe a hermit from his siblings. He's a Lord of Storm's End.
Dragonstone.
Storm's End is where the Baratheons are from, but he is on. I think
there.
I think Renly's in Storm's End, yeah. And then Robert was in King's Landing. I think he's on Dragonstone, Stannis.
Where is that geographically? He's
an island, larger island out to the east, out of Blackwater Bay.
So he's disconnected from the King's Landing of it all.
Yes.
Like, so he could just be like, just sort of disconnected and really just trying to, yeah, as you said, hitch his wagon to whatever, like, soothsayers or prophecies he can get, because it's probably not a lot of people there. Like, so it's just, maybe I just assume it's happenstance that he runs into the Red Woman.
I'm not sure that entirely tracks. I think that you actually had a better point when you were talking about the Red Woman before, because, well, you still have the good point, but it's like what Tyler said. He is very skeptical. You came up to him and if I told him I could make him $1 million, he'd probably kill me for trying to sell him something wrong. And that means she had to have shown him something. So when you were saying, does Stannis actually believe in this stuff? I mean, obviously we now know Davos has to believe in it to some extent because he saw it happen. To my understanding, Stannis had to have seen something. She had to have demonstrated it to him somehow. And we're never shown that, I don't think.
That scene, she's a cheap parlor trick, so she's able to make the lantern, like, get so hot it explodes. Like, that seems like it'd be a cheap parlor trick you could play to make someone believe. And then you just expand from that.
And actually,
doesn't she make the sword light up?
I think they just lit the sword on fire. Like,
the sword's on fire. But actually, too, touching on that, too, to talk a little bit about further on in the books there's an interaction with another character and Melisandre there. She kind of explains how she has these. In addition, she kind of talks about how not only is there the Lord of Light stuff, but she also has some cheap parlor tricks kind of, too, to make, like, flames turn a certain color or rise up or something like that briefly. So I think maybe it's like a combination maybe of both there, and kind of that instance for her of, like, she's able to, I guess my take on it is, like, there must have been something she showed Stannis there at some point in time that kind of was real enough to convince him, but in between kind of the ability to have the visions and stuff like that, she's able to maintain her grasp on everyone because of some cheap parlor tricks from time to time.
Drinking poison and not dying.
That's
right.
That's definitely not
that's
a cheap
also,
parlor trick.
That also happened, right?
Unless, of course, though, she takes the Princess Bride method and slowly takes it for many years there to kind of build.
He shouldn't have used iocane powder. That was his own damn fault.
Never start a land war in Asia.
That's very applicable to what's going on in Westeros.
Anyway, also I think it doesn't hurt that she's, a moderately attractive woman compared to the, like, really old and, like, growly looking whatever the other religion is. Scepter?
Septas of the Light of the Seven.
Whoever the gentleman is who freaks out when they burn down all the totems.
The Septon.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the Seven, yeah. But he was
Septon.
He was a maester, I thought.
I think he was just their mason.
Was he a mason? Oh, I thought he was okay.
So comparing an old gravelly maester to the somewhat attractive woman who can, make fire, like, everyone's intrigued by women who are on fire.
That's Gary's kink right there.
Joffrey and women who are set on fire.
No.
Anyway, I'm not going to go down that road anymore.
We'll never bring it up again.
I have one more point to touch on here, just kind of briefly, but I wanted to open it up. Did anyone else have anything else? Okay. The one final part I wanted to touch on was, again, going back to Tyrion playing the game there. He has an interaction with his cousin Lancel Lannister, basically, where he's learned or determined that Lancel is sleeping with Cersei because Cersei just is so great about maintaining the lines of the Lannisters. But he basically, like,
can't keep it in the pants, keep it in the family.
He basically
was beating me for the most offensive statement of On the podcast, I think I'm far away winning, but you're trying to catch up.
Tyrion basically brings Lancel over though to kind of not his side, but like his pieces on the board there as another kind of thing that he can manipulate. And I thought that was kind of interesting to show the other way that Tyrion is basically continuing to play the game.
Blackmail,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah. Definitely not going to turn around and bite him though.
Gold
No.
and deception.
Again, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steven.
Well, I was going to say, Amanda, a little bit different remark on the same situation. Amanda did have a pretty good comment while we were watching this, just showing saying the versatility of the actor who plays Lancel, because later on in the series, he plays a very different type of character.
Mm-hmm.
And so credit to that actor. He does a pretty good job.
You don't really think about him because he plays it to a perfect. You're just like, God, look at this teenager.
Like, I forgot about Lancel Lannister. I don't remember what happens to him later on, but I will learn as we rewatch the show.
Yeah.
He's perfectly fine. Everything's good. Everybody ends up happy.
Everything
Fine.
ends up well.
Everybody.
Yeah, just the whole mentality again of like the characters who are high are brought low. You know, Lancel thinks that he, in his position, he can do no wrong, and you know he's got the bed of the queen essentially. And just like that, he realizes his whole house is built on a deck of cards, and it comes crashing down. He's, I think, like on his knees begging. He's like, "Please, cousin,
Yep.
don't say anything. Don't say anything." You know, and that's almost the crueler fate. Is no, everything's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about me. I'll just sit on that little secret, and it'll be our thought. You know, it's almost better if you rip the Band-Aid off in that situation, because then it's like, oh crap, when's he going to say something? What's going to happen? You know, what's going to change? And you don't know. And yeah, he's just kind of the worm on the hook, as it were.
Very interesting compared to the Theon Greyjoy and his dad, was that Lancel Lannister assumed he was doing what he needed to do for his house, which was sleep with the queen, and then he talked to Tyrion and be like, "Oh, reality check, that's not a good idea." So
I wonder if Lannisters are attracted to Cersei, or if they're attracted to her as queen.
They're attracted to Lannisters in general.
Lannisters are just born attracted to other Lannisters because they're all attractive.
They wake up and they go, "I'm too sexy for my shirt. Too sexy for my shirt."
Too sexy for my cousin.
Oh no!
How much Lannister nudity has there been in this show? I think there's not enough.
Not enough.
All right. Well, with that point there, I suppose we will kind of
Shame.
we'll navigate our way to the end of this episode here.
Good callback.
So for next time, 2 more episodes from season 2. It'll be episode 5 and episode 6. Episode 5 is titled "The Ghost of Harrenhal," and episode 6 is titled "The Old Gods and the New." All right, any final closing remarks to talk about here? Everyone
No, sirree, Bob.
shaking their head in
It's getting
silence.
interesting. It's rolling towards a lot of fun stories as there's multiple lanes.
Fun.
Totally fun.
Quotes above those. Fun.
Good times ahead.
Nothing but party animal balloons being made and
Summer
birthday
beaches
cake.
in California.
Yep. All right. Well, that'll do us for this episode here. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you all have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7, I believe, of the Rewatch podcast. Nope. I got to start this over here.
Holy
That's okay.
cow!
Gary's dying already.
Who is running?
Just say
this
silence, and I see him going.
Myself. I was like, in mute. I was like, God. Okay, episode 7. Okay,
Too
let's
much-
also remember to hit the record button today.
Yeah, the
Too much
record
Cheeto
button is
grease.
going, so we're good.
How much Cheeto grease, Gary?
Double check. Okay, so this would be episode 7. Episode 6 is already published.
That's funny right there.
Okay, we're recording still. Okay, good to go. All right, everyone ready here now? Here we go.